Yeah, Marlene.
What was that? I can't hear you.
Marlene's with us too. Marlene's with us here, so the three of us are having a Zoom Seder with our families.
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
Hi.
Hi, Gladys. Hi, Rhea.
Hi.
Juliet.
So we did last night a virtual Shabbat with our family. So my son-in-law had set up our cell phones into 4 screens.
Can you see yourself
And
here?
so we all had Shabbos together, but we're in 4 different locations.
Nice.
Yeah. For some reason, my picture doesn't show.
You have to turn on your video.
You know, you told me that the other day. I did that. It didn't show the other day either.
Really?
Yeah,
Are you on an iPad? Are you on a phone or on your
I'm on the computer.
What's easier on the bottom of the computer? What do you see? Right at the bottom of all of us.
What you want to do with Zoom, run, save, cancel. So obviously, oh, here.
Can't hear.
Yes, here we need to see.
Is Betty Sharp with you?
It says something video. You see a picture of the video. You see a video? Anita.
Yeah, it just says
Once
stop
the rabbi
video.
comes, the screen will go to him.
All right. Turn it on. Press it, and then press it again. When you press it, see.
No microphone.
So stop video.
So it should be on.
What did it cost you?
It's not coming.
Guess what? You're left with $79.99. It's not a big.
Maybe you're in the dark.
For
Maybe
sure I'm
you
in the
should
dark.
turn your lights
I
on.
see others that are in the dark too.
A dark Seder. Hi, Frida.
Wow, how many people are here?
Saying hi.
Frida.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Rhea. Rhea, turn on your mic.
Kelsey on top who.
Turn on your
Hi,
mic.
Leah. Hi, Jack.
Hi. Hi. Now I hear you. Hi, Jack.
Hi, Jack.
Hi, everybody.
Lisa Braverman, we can't see your head. Yeah, a little better. Yeah.
You can actually tilt your
What are you
eating,
computer.
Gladys?
It
Closer
will
to your
work.
face. That's better.
Going back.
Hi, Sheila.
Jack is go
You
too.
want to know about Pesach?
Yes, I think we all do.
Back to the beginning.
What we're gonna do?
His name?
Hi, Frida.
Rona's on.
It's Carolyn.
Hi, Carolyn.
Who's Carolyn Rose?
Hello.
See all
Good
these,
that we have our names next to our face.
all these people, you can't see them.
And I don't see you in the dentist place.
Howard Rose. That's not good.
Hi, Frida.
Hi.
Oh, there it is.
Hi, Rona.
Yeah,
Hi.
everybody's. Hey,
Had Rona there.
I don't see
Here
Sandra.
in person.
Vego, come on.
I only have 9. How do you get to see everybody else? I only can see 9.
I'm not showing my Carolyn.
There's an arrow.
Did you go from the shul, from the uniform shul? Did you go on from there? Oh, it's easier if you, have you got the,
Hi there. Neighbors.
Coleman here.
Hello.
Hi, Ken.
yeah,
Hi, Mark.
Hi, Debbie.
It's very dark.
to the email from the shul. And click, there's a class for,
You can't see.
Hi, neighbors.
Hi,
Oh, it's Ellie.
hi, Ellie.
Hi, Ellie. You.
Hello, Ellie.
Hi, Rona.
Hi, Stan and Debbie.
Hi there, guys.
Hi.
Debbie.
Hello.
See what you're doing in there.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Sandra.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone, if you can hear me, I'm
Yeah.
going to ask everyone to please put on the mute on their screens. There's a mute button
Where?
so that we don't hear any noise in the background.
Can you mute us all?
At the bottom left of your screen, there's a way for me to mute it, but let me just see here.
You have to go into.
There we go. I think I just muted everybody. Okay.
Should it be white? Can anyone hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Gladys, but we're not supposed to be able to hear you.
Okay.
Let me try that again. Okay, great. All right, so Jonah first wants to say what? Happy Passover.
Happy Passover.
Okay, now you can go to bed.
No, I'm not going to bed.
They're doing a baking project upstairs, also on Zoom, with their class. And he can stay here if he's going to be quiet, but if not, he's going to have to leave. I hope everyone's doing okay. It's wonderful to see some faces that I miss very much. I hope everyone's doing well, and pleased to see that there's interest in learning more about some of the challenges that we're going to face this year at Passover. So I just want to make sure people know that at the bottom of their screens, there's a button that should be called chat or comments. And that's going to be really helpful for us to have this conversation. The chat or comment button, when you send out a comment publicly, that's the way you can ask a question. So if there's a specific item that you think should be addressed, I'll be able to read it through this comment section and be able to answer it, along with the Rabbi Sachs, who's somewhere here also on the checkerboard with us tonight. And if there's a question that I think he would be good at answering, I'll send the question over to him. So a few days ago, I sent out an email that I never thought I would have to send out ever in my life, preparing everybody for what is going to be a very strange Passover. I spoke to somebody earlier today who said to me, in 75 years of memories doing Pesach, she can never remember a Passover Seder without family gathered around the table. And I suspect that that's true for most of us who have hopefully not been through wars or other social disturbances, thank God. So it's been many years since Jewish communities have faced a time like this, where gathering is dangerous. And this is unfortunately one of those years. So the first thing I want to reiterate, if you didn't see that email, we are following the health instructions of the Canadian government and rabbinical boards around the world that have said that the prime place where this virus passes from one to another is when people are joining together around the table, having meals together. Because of that, we absolutely affirm the decisions made by these rabbis and by the health boards that you should be very, very careful getting together in large groups. I'm hesitating to use the word absolutely forbidden, but it's pretty close to absolutely forbidden. As I think we've tried to explain over and over again throughout this crisis, in Judaism, there is not much that is more important than the preservation of life. Maybe I can think of a couple of things. If someone said to me, don't say it's the most important thing, because it's true. If someone asks you to murder someone, you're supposed to take your own life rather than murder them. But there's like 3 or 4 things on the list, and other than that, life is more important. It is more important than Shabbat, certainly, more important than Yom Tov, certainly. And as sad as that's going to make Passover this year, it's my belief, based on what I'm seeing, based on what I'm reading, that it's absolutely necessary, particularly, by the way, for those over the age of 65, and I see some faces on the checkerboard tonight that are over 65. You know that you're at increased risk if, God forbid, you get this virus. It's very, very, very important that you not take any risks right now. So Passover is going to be different, and we're here tonight to help answer some questions and give clarity on what Passover should look like. But before I take individual questions, I figured I would just give you the most important questions that have been fielded my way, and hopefully that will cover some of the questions that you may have already had on your mind. There are some who have suggested that we simply cancel Passover this year and defer it. Now, it's interesting. It's not such a crazy idea. Some of you may know that in the Torah, there is a holiday called Pesach Sheni, the second Passover. And in biblical times, those who could not or were not able to celebrate Passover in the month of Nisan were permitted to do so in the month of Iyar on Pesach Sheni. To go back to a biblical custom is not such a crazy idea, but it would mean really, I think, a reevaluation of all of Judaism and everything that's happened in the last 2,000 years of Jewish development. I think that we are going forward with the assumption that what we're experiencing now is temporary. It will be over, and this might be an odd year, but this is going to be an odd year, and next year should be back to normal. And because of that, I don't see a reason to reevaluate all of Judaism. This isn't an event like the destruction of the temple, where you really had to rethink all of Jewish customs and practices because the world had changed fundamentally. It was impossible to live out the same Judaism you had lived out before. This is an interruption, hopefully that is temporary, but it's not a seismic shift in the way we ought to continue observing Judaism and performing Jewish practices. So no, I can't cancel Passover this year, unfortunately. But what I've tried to say over and over again is everyone is stressed out. And as much as the hospitals are going to be concerned with mental health, rabbis have to be concerned with spiritual health. Excuse me, as much as hospitals are concerned with physical health and mental health, rabbis have to be concerned with spiritual health. And the last thing I think we want people doing this year is taking every stringency of Passover to the extreme and feeling overwhelming pressure to have the perfect Seder. That is certainly not, I think, something healthy for most people to be aspiring to this year. I'm going into Passover like I think we all should be going into Passover. I told Carmela earlier today, let's just have a simple meal together. We'll go through the Haggadah. We'll give the kids a chance to sing the songs, and but don't go crazy. Let's not do anything elaborate. And in terms of koshering the kitchen and things like that, which in many years have been very stressful, I've tried to explain to her, as I hope to do tonight, what the basics are so that you can have a kitchen that's kosher for Passover if you'd like to cook at home. And I say that because you can just order, if you're able to, from our caterer. We have actually a few caterers that are preparing seders, helping people prepare meals for seders. This may be a year where you just want to do that. And if you're financially unable to do so, please speak to me, and we can help arrange it. Nobody should be not having a seder, even if they're alone, even if they're just two people, because they don't have the means. So I can't cancel Passover. We still have to do a seder, but what I'm trying to say is make it simple. That's, I think, one of the first questions that I've been getting. let's have a simple Passover Seder this year, but unfortunately I can't cancel it. Another question that's been fielded my way, is this the year to switch to kitniot or to allow kitniot? Kitniot, as you know, Ashkenazim refrain from eating on Passover, even though they are not considered chametz. Chametz is what the Torah says you can't eat on Passover. Kitniot are legumes, like I think the common ones are corn. Some people eat rice and consider that to be permissible on the holiday. Beans, edamame beans. Some people have said, can we switch to that custom this year? I actually don't see a reason to switch to kitniot this year more than any other year. If you think it's a silly custom and you're connected to Israel, where hardly anyone refrains from eating kitniot, everybody eats kitniot on Passover in Israel. If you've always felt that way, then you probably should have done this last year. I think if you're going to the grocery store and you're finding that there is no food that is really edible for you on Passover, then this may be the year to switch. That may be one example, but I have not heard that there's any shortages yet. Carmela said it was tough finding eggs today, and that would be a problem, but I'm afraid that there's no substitution for that. But I don't see a year for people who've been refraining from eating kitniot because it's family custom. I don't see this being a year to change from family custom, unless really there's a real reason. Like I said, there's nothing you can eat, or if you're afraid to go to the grocery store, but you happen to have a lot of kitniot products at home, that might be a reason to permit kitniot as well. Remember that you can eat whether if someone brings kitniot to your house, like my kids this year, there's these chicken nuggets that they like that have kitniot in them. They're going to be eating them. I won't eat them, but they're kids, and it doesn't bother me that they eat them, and it doesn't trafe up your kitchen when someone is having kitniot and others are not. Kitniot are not considered chametz. Okay, purchasing kitniot is tricky, so please be in touch with me directly if you have questions about how do you buy kitniot. Kitniot is not quinoa, by the way. Quinoa is a fruit, not a legume. I don't know why, but that's what I've been told, and it works for me because even Ashkenazim permit quinoa on Passover, and any quinoa that you buy in the store is fine. So that's a second question that I've been asked this year. People asked about selling chametz, and we have the forms online. Rabbi Sachs, if you could maybe put the link in the comments section for the selling of chametz form, then people can click even tonight to list their home and sell the chametz. Remember that Passover cleaning is not spring cleaning. People think that this is a holiday where you're supposed to go through every room in the house and clean up all your garbage and go through all the junk that you want to throw out. That is not what it means to kosher your home for Passover. Any room that you do not eat in, you don't have to go in. And any closet or cupboard that you will not be using on Passover, just tape it and we write chametz on it, put a piece of tape on it so you know that you're not supposed to go in there. You don't have to clean it, just leave it in there and sell it to, give me authorization to sell it to somebody, and we're going to sell all the chametz for the community before Passover. So appliances that you're not going to use, just put them in that cupboard. Not everything has to be cleaned. Things just have to be put away. And there's an amazing variety of disposable products are available today. So if you don't want to take out your china because there's just not a lot of people coming for Seder this year, use paper or plastic. Usually the Seder's table is supposed to look beautiful. That's part of the custom. It's supposed to be a beautiful table. But I actually introduced last year during one of my sermons, I explained to people that the Shulchan Aruch says the Seder table should be very plain and should not be as fancy as on Shabbat. Why? Because remember that this is a meal that commemorates slavery, and the matzah is the food of the slave. So the table shouldn't look like when people walk into the room like it's a fancy, elaborate meal. It should actually look simple. And paper plates today fall into that category, certainly, and there's nothing easier to kosher than brand new paper or plastic cutlery or utensils, which just have to be taken out of the plastic. And the other big question that I think that's been, did I answer that question about koshering for Pesach? That's good? Everyone understands that? The big one is live stream. Can we live stream our Seder? Lots of questions on this. This has been a very controversial topic this year. Rabbi Sachs, do you want to say a word, or are you too afraid to say something about this? Why don't I speak and then you give me, why don't I say something and then Rabbi Sachs, I'll give you a chance to comment. The usage of electricity on Shabbat and Yom Tov is a very complicated subject. Obviously, the Torah does not ban electricity. The Torah doesn't know what electricity is. And there have been debates between rabbis for decades now about what actually the problem is with the use of electricity. Because it's, for those who say it's fire, it's not really fire. For those who say it's cooking, it's not really cooking. For those who say it's makeba patish, one of the forbidden labors of Shabbat, which is completing a project, is completing an electrical circuit really completing a project? In the conservative movement, there was a very lengthy paper published by the dean of our rabbinical school, Rabbi Daniel Nevins, who, by the way, we should say a refuah shlema for. He actually has coronavirus, and he's doing well last time I heard, but he's the author of that paper. And in about 85, 86 pages, if I remember correctly, plus footnotes, he says, there is really no problem on a biblical level with the usage of electricity today. The problems come about when you see what's the right word? What labor, what function that electric thing is doing. So, for example, to turn on a lawnmower would be, in his view, okay. To cut the grass with that lawnmower would not be okay, if you understand. It's what you're doing with the device. And one can apply that same logic, at least in my mind, to the use of computers. Computers that are on, on at least a biblical level, it's hard to make an argument that a computer is actually doing something that's forbidden. But when you type into a computer, well, writing on a computer might be forbidden on Shabbat. Certainly writing is a forbidden labor of Shabbat, and Rabbi Sachs and I disagree about whether a computer typing is a form of writing or not. I think it is. I don't think he does. Long story short, I believe that there is some leniency in Jewish law for the use of Zoom on Yom Tov, on Shabbat as well. And I would say further that this has nothing to do with our current circumstances. It has nothing to do with coronavirus. If you would have asked me this last year, and you would say, I have elderly parents who can't come to the Seder, can I somehow connect with them over Zoom? I would have told you last year, I think you could do that. There are Orthodox rabbis who, and some other conservative rabbis who do believe that the use of electricity on Shabbat is absolutely forbidden, even potentially biblically forbidden. So I would encourage us, I know there's a lot of people that might have Orthodox family members, to not be judgmental if they're not comfortable using Zoom on their side. But I'll tell you, in the ritual committee, Steve is on the call tonight. We're setting up a live streaming system in the sanctuary so that people who are unable to attend synagogue for medical reasons can log into our live stream feed and watch our Shabbat services so that they can feel a part of things. Even those of you who go to Florida and don't like your shul in Florida might be able to tune in on Shabbat, so long as there's a reason why you can't go to the local shul, because we don't want people not going to shul and instead of going online. But if there's a medical reason why you can't get to shul, we've said we should make the opportunity available for people to hook up during live stream and do live stream. Well, this year, that's basically what's going on for everybody. Everybody is in a circumstance where for medical reasons, we can't be together. And there's something in Judaism called ve'ahavta, wrong one. Well, mind you, there is something in Judaism called ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha, but there's something else in Judaism called kabed et avicha ve'et imecha. You honor your mother and your father. And that's in the Ten Commandments. And to simply throw that out the window because the use of a computer might somehow be problematic, I would say, for me, I would question a person's value system if that's what they're saying to me. This, by the way, becomes very easy because I know a lot of people start Seder early. So if we start Seder early, that is, Seder doesn't really begin, isn't supposed to begin until an hour after candle lighting. Anyone know when that is this year? I haven't even checked. I'm assuming it's around 8 o'clock. Rabbi Sachs, you want to check in what time Seder's supposed to start? But I'm guessing
right now.
Okay, I'm guessing most of us don't wait until 8 o'clock. So if you're starting Seder at 6:30, it's not even Yom Tov yet, and you can certainly turn on your computer and connect with people then. And I think that's a wonderful way of being alone and still being together. I would just say respect people if they have a different opinion on this. By the way, candle lighting is 8:37? No,
7:35 I got, 7:35.
7:35 sounds better, okay. So if candle lighting 7:35, if you're starting your Seder early.
Second night is the 8:37, that's second night based off.
Okay, the second night presents another difficulty. But if you're starting your Seder at 6:30, you can connect with family regardless of whether they keep that stringency or whether they do not. So that is one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about. You know that there was a very controversial opinion that I posted on my Facebook page a couple of days ago. You can read about this. Some Sephardic Orthodox rabbis in Israel permitted the use of Zoom technology. These are Orthodox rabbis, permitted the use of Zoom technology for purpose of participating in the Seder. They said something very interesting. They said, it is very important for families to connect with grandparents because the grandparents are the keepers of tradition. And they were afraid that if the grandchildren don't have that connection with their grandparents, they won't do the Seder properly, or they won't take it seriously. Now, I would have probably permitted the Zoom, whether that was the argument or not, but I do think there's a lot to think about there, about the role that families need to play coming together at the Seder. This is a ritual that the Bible describes as being a transmission from one generation to another of a story. V'higadeta levincha bayom hahu. You tell your son on that day. This is all basic stuff. I'm sure you know it, but this is why children take the focus at the Seder. And grandparents are seen as sort of the keepers of the tradition and therefore play a crucial role. And these Sephardic rabbis were saying, if they're not there, one of the main functions of the Seder can't take place. And if it's possible to bring them in through Zoom technology, then why not? It may not be. Now, they said this is only permissible this year. But that's probably, to me, the argument that was their weakest, because it would apply, in my mind, to any year when, for one reason or another, families can't gather around the table together. Now, how do you do a Seder with Zoom? I think that's something you might want to give some thought to. If you want to set up the laptop on the table, give a reading to different people. This is going to be an interesting experiment, but remember that you can't eat matzah on a computer screen, so you still need to have, no matter where you are, the basic requirements for a Seder. That's not much, but it means you have to have matzah, you have to have wine, you have to have maror, a Seder plate, the basics for a Seder, and a small meal too. So, Rabbi Sachs, do you want to add anything to what I've said about Zoom?
Sure. The only thing, I would add is, right, their position is really interesting, because it spoke about a system of leaving Zoom on before the holiday starts and for all 3 days, which is really undoable. Right, to have that, because you'd have a link in your home for 3 days straight. Every time you walk through the room, people on the other end could see you and watch you.
Right.
And I don't think Zoom or any other service goes more than a day. I don't know that you can leave it on really for 3 days, because it goes right into Shabbat. But someone asked in the chat questions, is there a difference of using a voice command versus doing it actively? And I don't know how you feel, Rabbi Grover. My understanding is that there really is no difference. That to use a voice command is the same as activating something by hand or by...
What do you mean by that, Rabbi Sachs? What is a voice command? You mean with Alexa?
You say, Alexa, turn on Zoom, right? Alexa
can turn on Zoom? That's news to me.
I don't know if she can do that, but you can do voice, FaceTime, and other things that you can do with some of these things, or a phone call you could activate with just your voice.
Interesting.
Alexa to Alexa can do video chat if you have a screen one. So that was what somebody asked, can you do it with your voice? And I don't think there's really a significant difference between pressing a button or speaking to an object, but you might disagree, Rabbi.
Well, what I would say is it is important that we remember that one of the principles of Shabbat is that it should not look the same as other days. It's called uvda dechol. Shabbat should not include in it things that we ordinarily do during the rest of the week. To me, that's the big concern of permitting technologies on Yom Tov and Shabbat, and how this can get out of hand. Because I think more and more, all we're doing the rest of the week is using technologies. And I think it's important for me, raising a young family and also just seeing the way technology has infiltrated our lives, it's important for me to keep Shabbat and Yom Tov as a day where technology does not infiltrate our lives. So to say, Alexa, open the light for me, I think that's an uvda dechol. It's just laziness. Just just put a timer on the wall, and then this is taken care of for you, and you don't have to use an electrical advice. So maybe I should clarify that the reason that I think it's permissible to do Zoom this year is because it is accomplishing a mitzvah. It is accomplishing including generations at the Seder table, honoring parents, bringing people who would be isolated and alone to your own table. So for the purpose of a mitzvah, I think one can be lenient with electricity and with technologies. For the purpose of laziness, I'm not accusing you, Rabbi Sachs, of being lazy, but for the purpose of laziness, I have more problems with that.
So we agree that the voice command isn't the way to do it.
I would ask, isn't the way to do what? To turn on the Zoom?
Yeah, that was the person's question. Barry and Lisa asked if Zoom, using voice commands to control a computer instead of typing, if that's better than just typing.
Yeah, to me, it's not either one is okay. Whether it's done through your voice, you're still activating something, whether it's through a click or through your voice command, some electrical signal is being sent, some processing is taking place. So I don't really see a difference between one or the other.
I think what you just said a moment ago about how here Zoom is performing the mitzvah actually in a way by bringing those generations is a great thing to think about, because I know many people wouldn't traditionally use Zoom, but would traditionally use a light switch or other electronics in their home. So to think about that this really is no different than their general use of electricity, except here it's for actually a purpose of accomplishing what we're trying to do with the Seder.
Right, which remember goes back to many of the statements the movement has made. Like when the movement permitted driving on Shabbat, it was not to go to the mall. It was not to, I don't know, go on a scenic trip. Remember, if you read that responsum, it says, if you don't live near a shul, and there's no shul near you that you can access, but there's a shul that's nearby that you can drive to, you should drive to the synagogue. Now, I know it's a very controversial responsum, but it goes to show you that I think there is a balance between how strict we want to be with every prohibition on Shabbat, and understanding that Judaism is not just a set of laws, but a value system as well. And to say, look what a good Jew I am, but to block your parents from just being with you at the table, or block your sisters and brothers from being with you at the table, seems to me a problem of Jewish values and not just of Jewish law. So I think the real challenge in our day, in the world that wants to observe Jewish law in a humane way, is to give language for those values. So maybe the wrong language is not, maybe it's wrong language to say it's a mitzvah to have to bring in your parents and grandparents and extended family around the table via Zoom. Not that it's a mitzvah, because a mitzvah means commandment, right? But to me, it is about balancing priorities, understanding that when you're lenient in one area, you're strict in another. And when you're strict in one area, you're being lenient in another. So you want to be strict with the laws of Shabbat and Yom Tov and lenient on the laws of honoring parents, or lenient on the laws of honoring Yom Tov and Shabbat and strict with the laws of honoring parents. And to me, it just seems that at a Seder, the presence of family at the table is such an important part of what we've come to appreciate about the Passover. It really would be a shame if the technology was available, but we still didn't make use of it, given that there's leniencies that are allowed. And by the way, I also want to mention, we are trying as quickly as possible to get the live streaming technology up in the synagogue, so that this can be an option for people not just to access family seders, but to access synagogue, since it is likely that it will take some time for us to be in a safe and healthy place for people to gather together in large groups. So someone says you don't need Zoom, you can use Skype, FaceTime, Facebook, Google Handouts. It's correct. They're all good. All of these technologies, including Skype on your cell phone, just setting it up there is accomplishes the same thing. Might be easier for some people. So Rabbi Sachs, did you have any other questions that were asked of you in the past week?
You really touched on all the main questions I've been getting. I got one other question, which was about Haggadot, someone who doesn't have them in their home because they go to their parents who has them. And is that a worthwhile leaving the house necessity in these times when we're supposed to stay home and non-essential purchases? So the only thing I can say is the Rabbinical Assembly has a published Haggadah with beautiful illustrations that they've made available for free. So I'm happy to send the link to anybody who would like to have one that they can print out at home, ideally before the Seder, or use digitally if that's all they can do. If they are looking for that, they don't have access to a Haggadah.
There's also a website called Amazon, and there are tons of Haggadot. And interesting, good Haggadot, the amazing variety of Haggadot with that are geared towards children and that have more explanations and have more transliterations are really remarkable. So please go on Amazon and see what they have. It says Amazon delivery is very delayed, but I just bought a book on Amazon the other day. They said 2-day delivery, but I'm a Prime customer. You still have a week and a half. I'd be surprised if it would take that long. But as Rabbi Sachs said, there are online versions available that people can use. So there's no reason you shouldn't have a Haggadah this year. So Brana and Jeff say, I have a bunch of Haggadahs that I want to get rid of, if anyone wants them. Okay. Contact Brana or Jeff Ginsburg, and they have Haggadot available. Adele and Steve are answering. Go ahead.
I said above Brana and Jeff, though, there's a question.
Yeah, I was going to say, so that's an interesting one. Could we do a Seder on another day during Pesach other than Yom Tov? It seems to me you can do a Seder any day you want to, any day of the year. There's no rule about when you do a Seder. However, that does not exempt you from doing a Seder as well on the 2 nights, the first 2 nights where it's where you're obligated to have that Seder. But no reason why you can't have another one. We used to do that in Montreal. When I was younger, we would go to the seniors' home, and on the third night of Passover, we would do a 3rd night Seder, and everyone would come, and we would have a Seder together with seniors, and it was one of the very special memories I have from Passover as a kid. So there's nothing wrong with that. Glenda, I only joined about 10 minutes ago. Passover food and leniency towards things kosher for Passover. Rabbi Sachs, you want to take that one?
Happy to. I don't know beyond what we spoke about before. Are you talking about kitniot for those that...
Are there leniencies for food towards foods this year that are kosher for Passover?
But I don't know that what's kosher or not kosher for Passover has changed in light of COVID. But many people don't realize that a lot of products, especially purchased before Passover, don't need a special hechsher.
Right, that's the big fight that we have
for Passover symbol. So I think that's something important to think about and to look at. And buying things like milk and cheese that can just be simply hechshered and don't need a special kosher lepesach, as long as you buy them before the holiday begins. So stocking up as much as we can on those types of foods so we don't run into searching during Passover for them.
Please take a look at the Beth Tikva Passover guide. What Rabbi Sachs is saying is correct. We felt the need to produce our own guide as we saw that CORE was getting stricter and stricter with the way they were telling people to observe Passover. One of probably the biggest dispute I've had with CORE about Passover is what Rabbi Sachs referred to. This rule about buying things before Passover. So let me explain. On Passover, all around the year, there's a general rule in kashrut called batel b'shishim. Bitul b'shishim means if less than 1/60th of what you're about to eat or drink contains something that you are forbidden to eat or drink, you can pretend it's not there. So literally, if some bacon grease fell into my soda pop, but it was less, now it had to fall in there. It's not like I said, oh, this would taste really good if I put some bacon grease in here. It had to have fallen in, but it's less than 1/60th of what had fallen in. It's as if it is not there. On Passover, that rule does not apply. On Passover, the rule is bitul b'mashehu, which means any amount of forbidden anything in what you're about to eat or drink makes it forbidden, which is the reason for the intensity of kashrut on Passover. So what Rabbi Sachs is saying is that people forget that if you buy something before Passover, as long as it contains, if wheat ingredients or chametz ingredients are less than 1/60th of what you're buying, it's as if it's not there. So the famous example is like orange juice. It drove me nuts when I first came to Toronto and found that they were making Tropicana orange juice kosher for Passover. What reason would you make, and by the way, charging double the price, of course. What reason would you make kosher for Passover Tropicana orange juice? Well, other than the profit margins. It's because if you needed orange juice in the middle of Passover, you would have to buy kosher for Passover orange juice. But if you buy it before Passover, you don't need kosher for Passover orange juice. And that applies to a whole bunch of different ingredients. Just to think of a couple off the top of my list, help me out, Rabbi Sachs, but that applies to butter. You don't need kosher for Passover butter. You don't need certainly yogurts, plain, as long as it's unflavored, plain yogurts don't need a kosher for Passover label.
So just to clarify, my understanding, butter, even during the holiday, you don't need a kosher for Passover.
Not in Canada, that's in the US. Butter is a federally regulated thing. So there's different ingredients in Canada and in the US and in many, many other countries. In US, grade AA butter does not have whey in it. I think in Canada, there's a little bit of whey that's added. But if it's bought before the holiday, it's not a problem. Anything else you can think of that Rabbi Sachs, that
milk
bought before Passover? Milk, right. You got to be nuts to buy kosher Passover milk. Anyway, all of it is on our wine. Don't worry about wine. All kosher wine is kosher for Passover. I've never seen a bottle of kosher wine that's not kosher for Passover. Coconut oil is fine. All coconut oil is kosher for Passover. Coffee, all unflavored coffee is fine. Just buy it before Passover and you're fine.
Decaf is more complicated, right?
Yes, because decaf, they add.
Decaf in general, it's bad. And I'm willing to say it's a sin any time of the day.
Can we use an item that has already been opened before Passover? as long as what you're opening, especially this year, as long as what you're opening is a cold, nothing ever heated went into that. It was always just the spoon. So this comes up often with salt or different herbs and spices. As long as you just put a cold spoon in there, even if it was opened before Passover, it's fine. And the spoon was clean, right? It's only the worry is that there was something that was added into it with that was heated or that was dirty when you opened something. Cheese and milk, Gladys is saying. Any cheese and milk. Any, well, not oat milk. Oat milk is a pure chametz. But almond milk, certainly. Regular milk. You can look at the Beth Tikva Passover guide. Rabbi Sachs just, Rabbi Sachs, could you, actually you didn't post it. Could you post?
I posted the chometz one, I'll post it.
Could you post Beth Tikva's Passover guide? And you'll see a whole list of the foods that you can buy before Passover that don't require a kosher for Passover label on it. Does anyone have questions that they'd like to ask?
So Ria asked a question, how stringent should the koshering process be?
Go ahead, yeah.
And I think it should be as stringent as it should be any year, be my opinion, except that I think most people go above and beyond what's really necessary when it comes to Passover. It's hard to give specific advice that's general to everyone, but I'm happy if anyone wants to consult about how to kosher a pot or a pan or parts of their kitchen one-on-one. I'm happy to have those conversations for easy ways of doing this. I used to work for a camp and a day school in LA doing kashrut supervision, and it's very easy once you get in the routine of it to kosher a lot of these things, much more so than I think what most people go through of covering and koshering and all sorts of things that don't necessarily need to even be dealt with for Passover.
Yep. Alan is saying smoked cheeses or spiced cheeses, correct. Those are not kosher for Passover. You have to check to make sure that the cheese is unflavored. There's no special spices or anything that's added to it. Any questions that people want to ask through them in person on the microphone? Feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi, it's Shelley.
Hi, Shelley.
Hi, I just wanted to ask, I'm using an iPad and I've sent a few questions, but it hasn't gone through. So anyhow, I just wanted to ask you if you're doing the Seder, because there's a good possibility I'm still in isolation.
Yeah.
There's a good, how do we see each other? Like I can see you, but how do I see, is there a way so we can see all the other people that are connected?
If you look at the top right corner of your screen, there should be the top right corner, there should be like different little boxes.
Right.
If you're using an iPad, are you using an iPad?
Yes.
Then look on the left.
No, it's on the right.
Left.
On mine, it's on the right.
Okay.
There is a way, it's a little bit different depending on what device you have, but there is a way to see everybody. Like right now, I'm seeing everybody. I don't want to look at myself.
So if I'm just looking at participants, is that the one?
Yeah.
But
or it should be on my screen. It's on my screen. It's like 9 small boxes that are joined together.
And on the iPad, it's on the left-hand side on the top. There's like a little grid.
It's like a grid, right?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Just a minute.
And you press the grid.
Oh, there you are.
Okay. That's where it is.
Okay, so that's how we can do it. Okay, great.
But each person has to have their own iPad.
Right, or a phone.
Or can't you use a mixture of iPads and?
Yes, Zoom works on many different platforms. Someone did say Zoom is limited to 45 minutes. First
Yeah,
of
that's
all,
what I know.
that's about as much as I can take of my family, so that might be a helpful thing. For those who want more time, there must be some way to work around that. First of all, there are other platforms other than Zoom, but there you can do Skype, which I know is unlimited, and someone else could activate Zoom. I think if you pay a little bit more money, then
If you can pay $20 a month and get it for unlimited time, and if
there you go.
the host on it has the 20-minute, has the one they pay for, can everyone else who gets on, will they be able to stay on it? That's the question I have.
Yes, yes. Well, that's what we're doing right now, right? Beth Tikva is the host, and everybody who's on can stay on this, and we've already exceeded 40 minutes.
Right.
FaceTime, if people have Apple devices, the newest version, as a couple years ago, you can get, I think, 15, 16 people on a FaceTime call now. So there's a lot of variety out there. WhatsApp has a video chat function, Facebook Messenger. There's a wide variety.
Right.
Okay.
So remember, I would suggest if you're going to be including a relative via Zoom or Skype this year, make it one of the 4 questions. Question number 5 should be, why this year, why on all other nights do we not have Zoom at the table, but tonight we do have Zoom at the table? And answer that question and try and explain about what the purpose is of Pesach, why it's important that we're together. Even if we can't be physically together, why it's important that we're at least virtually there.
That's a great idea.
Night of questions, right? It's not just to see each other's faces. It's because there's a role that families play, are supposed to play being together. So someone asked, what about if I have to, if I'm alone for Passover? So I've been thinking a lot about this because I heard a podcast about spending Passover alone from another rabbi to give me some ideas on what to advise people. Frankly, I found the podcast a bit depressing. It was saying, you should send pre-recorded videos to your loved ones, or send pictures in advance and they can look at the pictures. I think if I had to be alone over Passover, I would, it's a 3-day yontif this year, right? It's Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night. It's a long time of not seeing each other if there are people who in your family you can't see via Zoom. But just understand what the minimum requirements are of Passover and understand that no one expects this year to be like it was in previous years. That there's some, I'm doing a class next week called "Why is God doing this to us?" or why is this happening? And I really believe that there are things, you might think I'm crazy, but you have to be a little crazy to be a rabbi. I think that there are lessons we're supposed to learn this year. I hope it's just this year and that's it. But I think there are some lessons that we're supposed to learn. I don't think it's such a bad idea to take a break once in a while and maybe have a year of self-examination and a year where we're doing Seders a little differently than in the past. While it's wonderful to be together, families around the table, I will tell you that there are challenges with that as well. My kids, when their cousins are all around the table, it is very difficult for them to pay attention to what actually is going on in the Haggadah. We have elderly people around the table who can't hear what's going on and want to eat very quickly. We have uncles around the table that make jokes every 5 minutes and distract. And my sister who uses her cell phone at the table, and that drives me crazy. I'm not saying I don't want her there and that we're not going to, but maybe next year she'll think, you know what, I really missed being together last year And I think I'll put my cell phone down this year so that we can all be more present. That's my craziness, or what I think the lessons might be. But I say it because I think there is an element of Pesach that is scary this year and unpleasant, but there's also some things that are worth reflecting on. Having a Seder alone, or even as a small family, has some silver linings, I think. Rabbi Grover mentioned when they talked about butter, what is the problem with whey vis-a-vis Passover? I think that the whey contains, I'm not an expert on this, but I think that the whey contains some sort of chametz additive into it, and therefore buying it on Passover would be a problem.
Here's Jonah.
Yes. Other questions that people want to ask in person? Or on the microphone that you didn't get a chance to ask in the comments section?
What about lactose-free cheese?
Good one. I'm guessing that just like other cheeses, as long as the ingredients on that cheese are simple, that there's no issue, just unflavored. As long as it's unflavored cheese, I'm guessing that there's no problem. Just make sure to buy it before Passover.
Rabbi, my daughter suggested that we start our Seder at 6, the first Seder anyway. We wouldn't light the candles or say Kiddush, but just do the Seder. And then when it's time to light the candles, she would turn off, because she's Shomer Shabbat and so she would turn off her whatever, if it's Zoom we're doing, and the rest of the family could continue if they wanted to, but she would light the candles after that when it's time only.
That's a great idea. Right, that's another part of Pesach where some people are stricter than others. There are some who are very strict to only start the Seder at nightfall. Remember, the miracle happened at night, so the experience of the Seder has to happen at night. The problem, of course, is that kids are not awake at that hour, and hardly the adults are awake at that hour. There is a page in the Beth Tikva Passover Guide that talks about this. How early can you start? How late you can start according to the Committee of Jewish Law and Standards. It's worth taking a look at if you're interested in this responsum. But that's a good solution if you want to be together, especially on Zoom, to start a little bit earlier. And then if there's some family that wants to turn it off, they can start all over again once the camera's off.
Mute. What about almond milk for people who can't eat any dairy?
Almond milk is easy. I don't think almond milk, I mentioned it, as long as it's purchased before Passover, as long as it has a hechsher on it, no problem.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions?
I think that's it.
So I want you to know that not just at this session tonight, but right up until the Seder. Hi, Merle. Right up until the Seder, I'm available for questions. If you prefer to ask them privately, just send me an email, rabbigrover@bethtikvatoronto.org, and I'm happy to answer or address individual concerns one-on-one. Go ahead, Merle.
Yeah, do you think that the whatever it is, the system transmission system for services might be up by Yontif, by Pesach?
I would rather not. I heard that some installation work is happening tomorrow. I am hesitant to pin down a date. Technology and Beth Tikva don't go together very well. And I think they might do some installation, but until we figure out how the system works and how to use it, I'm not sure how long that will take. We had an emergency board meeting to put this together, to get the approval for the contract. And even then, because so many churches and synagogues wanted this installed at the same time, the cameras were out of stock. So they're just coming back in stock now, and we're going to put it up as quickly as possible. But just as a corollary to that, just because we have the system installed does not mean we can have services necessarily. We are trying to keep up to date with what health recommendation is coming from the important people, and a lot of those important people are sort of our members who are in as an inner circle advising us on what's safe. And in order to have a service, you need 10, and we have to make sure that we can bring 10 people into the sanctuary and that it is safe to do so if we're going to start broadcasting services. So I didn't mention this tonight, but I have also been getting a lot of questions about, can I tune in to a service that is being live streamed? Particularly, this is important for Yizkor. Now, I have not done a survey of who is doing services who is live streaming services right now. My own view is I would be careful which services you're going to. There are a lot of services that are using, I think, faulty logic to include people on video cam as part of the minyan. I think that's absolutely forbidden and clearly forbidden in Jewish sources. But there are those who are so desperate for a minyan that they're using leniencies to include people on cameras. So I would be careful of joining a live stream of a service that's really just two people and a guitar that are conducting a full service when they really should not be, and saying Kaddish when they really should not be. So if anyone knows of a service that is still going on that's live stream where there are actually 10 people present in order to have the service, I would be curious to know. I know some people who would be interested in attending. But just to go online and type in live stream service, you can find lots of places, but be careful that that they're not conducting a service in a way that they really shouldn't be.
Okay. So,
go ahead, Merle.
No, actually, I had made some bad technical calls, and I spoke to one gentleman that actually that Steve told me is comes to the minyan at least on Wednesday mornings, but he said to me, I think he lives alone, but I'm not 100% sure. And he has a daughter, but that doesn't mean the daughter lives with him. But he said how much he misses the morning minyan, and she also said to say hello to you, because I said I was going to hopefully be on this call and would convey this. So this is not directly about Pesach, but I just have this gut feeling, having made just a few calls, that especially for the people who live alone, that maybe instead of, so maybe you can't do that morning minyan like with 10 people, but maybe you could do something else, like a morning study session for those minyan people, because I think that they're missing out. It's not just, in my humble opinion, the davening. I think it's also the getting together, it's a camaraderie. It's that part of their day. And I, if this was going to be a week or two, so big deal, but this could be a couple of months, and I'm really feeling for these people who are really, basically on their own.
Rabbi Sachs, go ahead.
What do you do about people who want to have to shiva?
Oh, I'll get to that. That's a good question. That's not a Pesach question. It's just a question of what we're doing right now. Rabbi Sachs came to me today. I think Rabbi Sachs, your class was last night?
Yeah.
And he said to me, I'm never doing classes in person again. I had 10 times as many people on my live stream class as I have when I do it in person. So Merle, I can absolutely, I don't think it's just your opinion. I think we actually have evidence that people want more of these Zoom sessions and more, and we are trying as much as we can to move our content onto virtual platforms just like this one. This morning, I don't know if any of you were at Tibby's Hallel service. That we were able to do, and I thought that went really well. And Rabbi Sachs is working, you want to speak, Rabbi Sachs, about some projects that you're working on now?
Just something we've talked about is, besides the wonderful classes, if I say so myself, and other programs online, we're talking about doing some hangouts for just groups that get to see each other here at shul, but don't right now. So trying to put together a group for maybe Tikva women, or for the
choir is doing something.
The choir did a session last night. Things like that that are a little more just for us to see each other's faces and schmooze, because I know, at least for my class, a lot of people before and after enjoyed that time of just getting to schmooze and see people that they don't usually get to see outside of the building.
So could I say one more thing? Is there a way that you could maybe do some reminders about some of these classes? Because like I totally forgot about yours last night.
Yes. So every day I knew that was going to be the case. I've told Ricky now he should be sending out an email from the shul office every day with what classes are being offered. There's Bracha's class on Wednesdays, I think.
Tuesday.
My class is on Monday. And you're going to get a sermon from Rabbi Sachs tomorrow and some musical content, I think, on Sunday. So we're trying to pump out content as much as we can. People think it's quiet now at the shul. I don't think I've ever worked as hard as we're working now, because people have a lot of free time, and with there a lot of people's regular duties on hold. So shul can play a role in helping to make this time more efficient, more, what's the right word? More useful, more valuable, more worthwhile. And we're looking for ways to do that more and more. So please share your ideas with us and participate as much as you can. Frida, I just want to answer Marilyn's question quickly. The rules at the cemetery are changing every day, and they just keep getting, unfortunately, more and more restrictive. All of the cemeteries are now closed, and the only people who are allowed to attend funerals right now at the cemeteries are immediate family, and there are no shiva visits in person that would be permitted, or that recommended or permitted. So please, everybody, stay healthy and have your friends and loved ones stay healthy, because I'm dealing now with a couple of families who are sitting Shiva, and it's awful just to be alone with nobody. You have phone calls, but it's not the same. That will be the case for the foreseeable future.
Wow.
Okay. Can I ask?
Yes, go ahead, Frida.
We belong to a chavurah that's part of the shul.
Yeah.
Would it be possible for us to Zoom in, to use the Zoom of the shul? Like, can anybody use it, or we all belong to Beth Tikva? So
yeah. Let me speak to Doris about that. The challenge is we can only have one Zoom meeting take place at one time. So if there's a board meeting that's using Zoom, you can't have another meeting using Zoom. I think it's an extra $5 to pay for multiple access. So let me check with Doris to see if that can be arranged. It shouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
Someone asked, are we going to be recording more of my classes? I forgot to record the class on Monday. This is actually being recorded now. So if anyone missed the session, they can review. Part of the challenge with recording, Rabbi Sachs was telling me, is that we see all your faces in the recording, and I'm not sure you want your faces disseminated to the public. So we're trying to be a little bit careful with people's privacy, and keep these live as much as possible.
Especially since most of us need a haircut by now.
Yeah.
Dave.
Other questions that people have?
Rabbi?
Yes.
Hi, it's Shelley. I just wanted to ask you because my yard site for my mom is coming up in about a week.
Yeah.
And I missed part of your lecture. I only got in for the last part of it the other day. So I'm just not clear what to do about.
So as far as I know, there are no minyanim that are currently that are online or anywhere. And when we are finding minyanim, we are calling the police and asking the police to get involved and shut them down as fast as possible. What I was trying to convey in my lesson about Kaddish, which was, I think, on Monday, was that Kaddish is only one way that we honor the memory of our loved ones, and it's not even the essential way that we honor their memory. It is a ritual that we should continue to practice, but it's not the only way to remember somebody special to you. So make sure if you have a candle at the house, that you light a yard site candle. If there's a mitzvah that you can perform, if there's tzedakah that you can give in honor of the deceased, it is just as powerful. And please let me know. I have a special prayer that you're supposed to say if you can't get a Kaddish together. There's a minyan, together. There's a special prayer that I have that's published in the new conservative Siddur that is supposed to be said in such a circumstance.
Okay.
Please let me know and I'll send that to you.
Okay, thank you.
So again, please feel free to send me questions over email if you have personal matters that you want to consult with. Let's get ready for the Seders by remembering some of the songs. I think this is a time for Adir Hu, because the theme of the song is that God will build his kingdom speedily in our days. And my wife seems to think that everything going around the world is a sign that Mashiach is on his way, or on her way. Let's hope that she's right. If you know it, you can sing it with me. I hope you don't need a Haggadah for this song, for the first verse at least.
You have to get everyone to mute because we'll all be on, it's a delay.
Yes, I will do mute, but I want your homes to be filled with this song. Adir Hu, Adir Hu, Yivne Beito Bekarov, Bimheira, Bimheira, V'yameinu Bekarov, El Bnei Beitcha Bekarov. May we be together in Jerusalem in person next year. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks for
Thank
joining.
you, Rabbi Grover. This was awesome.
Thank you so much.
This is amazing. Thanks so much.
Someone asked about the siyum. The siyum, as I wrote in my email, we're going to send out a link. It is perfectly permissible to participate in the siyum. That's the siyum of the firstborn for those whose tradition is to attend a siyum that morning so that they can eat. I'll send you a link for, I'll find some yeshiva that's doing it and we'll send it out before Yontif.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good to see everyone. Good night.
All right.